Good Tov. Today's daf is daf Beis in Sanhedrin. As we begin Sanhedrin, we've learned for the last year or so, Baba Basra, Baba Kamba, Messiah Basra, about all the various Nezikin, the rules of torts and damages between one person. Now, how do you judge these people? What kind of courts do we use? So we say, Dine Mamna, says the Mishnah. As we said yesterday, there's three kinds of courts. There's a small court of three. There's a three judges. There's a larger court of 23, and then the largest court, the Sanhedrin Agdola, is one court in Yerushalayim of 71. So Dina Mamanis B'Shlosha. So we're going to deal with this Lashon in the Gemara later on the Gemara today. It says Dina Mamanis, money matters are judged with three judges. Then it says whether it's larceny, theft, stealing, and damages that you do either yourself or your animal does to somebody, that's also with three. So isn't that also Dina Mamanis? Gzeos is also Mamanis. So what does that mean? Dina Mamanis Shlosh. And then it says Gzeos. Just say Dina Mamanis Shlosh. The Gemara is going to ask about that. Nezek, v'chatzi nezek, damages and chatzi nezek. That means full damages if the shore is a mu'ed or if he's a tom, he does pays chatzi nezek. Also we see that's also with the court of three. Isn't that also included in chavalos? We'll see. Tashlume kefel, pay double for burglary. Tashlume avachamesha, after burglary. You sold it, or you sold the shore or seb, and or you shechted it, you chayiv 4 or 5 times. Those are knas. V'shlosh, it's also. So you see knasos. The Gemara Baba Kama says chatzin esek is also a knas. All those are three. Ha'onis mafata, raping or seducing. Motzi shema. If a person protests or claims that his wife committed adultery after they were engaged, and if he's lying, he has to pay $100. That's also b'shlosha. Rav Meir Shapiro say no. Mostly shem b'shlosha. You need a court of 23 neshos. If it's true that she did commit adultery and you have edim to that effect, you have to judge her with a court of 23. So therefore, you start off already with a motzi shem with a court of 23 in case it leads to a capital case. Makas b'shlosha. If you have to give makos lashes, that's also if somebody's going to get lashed. That's usually for a regular lav. Also a court of three. You need a court of 23. The Gemara will explain all these things. As we said yesterday, this is one long mission in our Gemara for the whole parak, but it's actually in the Mishnayos. It's six different Mishnayos. Iber HaChodesh, if you extend the month, make it a larger month by 30 days instead of 29. Also, you need three to take the witnesses and say who testify that they saw the new moon. Iber HaShana, if you intercalate the year and add an extra month, that's also b'shlosha divrei Meir. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, no, b'shlosha matchil. You start with three, b'chamisha nosen. You add 2 more, so nosen. You debate that with 5. V'gom b'shiva, and you should declare the new year, the upcoming year, or the year in which they were already. In those days, it was based on agriculture, etc. You would complete it and give the verdict. You only extend the year by a month with a court of 7. But if you did it with 3, that's also b'diavad, that's okay. Smichas sekenim. Now we saw the Mishnah till this we saw yesterday. We learned yesterday. Now we continue on with the next Mishnah. Smichas sekenim. The sekenim have to put their hands lay their hands, the smicha on the head of the param davashal tzibur. If the tzibur sinned because of a mistake made by the high court, and they paskin wrong, and then we have to bring the param davashal tzibur to atone for the nation, and they do smicha on the animal. That's laying your hands on the animal's head. That's or rufas egla, or breaking the neck of an egla rufa in case you find a dead body. You don't know which city the murderer came from. You don't have the murderer. So the city that's closest has to be involved in this Arifah Segla. That's also with a court of 3. Divrei Reb Shimon. Yudam Rechamisha, you need 5. Hachalitza v'amiyunim. Let's say you do chalitza. We learn if a yavam doesn't commit yibum, instead he has to do chalitza if his brother died with no children. So that chalitza is done in a court. V'amiyunim b'shlosha also with 3. Miyun is of course if she had a kedushin drabanan, that not her father married her off, but let's say her mother or brothers married her off when she was underage, and when she gets to 12, she can refuse. That has to be a court of 3. The Mishnah does not mention Gittin, so some say because Gittin doesn't have to have a court, as we saw at the end of Baba Basra, Rabbi said, Atu kulam bezdin megarshin. You said, remember, he said, if they want a divorce, you should make maybe they're getting divorced only to play a trick on the Orev, the person who said, I'll pay for the ksuba if the husband doesn't do it. So you make him, he forswears his wife. You cause him to forswear his wife from having any anah. So in case there's a shtick, if he's not a Kohen and he can divorce her and take her back, he divorces her to get the ksuba, so that they'll get the ksuba from the guarantor, remember, and then he'll take her back. So to prevent that, we say he has to make a swear, we force him to swear. But the Rabbi says, does everybody go to court when they give a get? You can give a get in front of two witnesses. So here we don't mention that you need a court. Some enforcement say because of that reason, that's why it's not mentioned. Others say it just was left out. But it would also, it's also proper to do a get in court, like we do today, just to make sure that everything is done right. Netter Rabbi, now, Netter Avai is from the fourth year of like a vine, or Meiser Sheni, which also, all these things have to be brought to Yerushalayim, and you have to be poted. Let's say you have produce outside of Yerushalayim, you want to bring Yerushalayim, you have to be poted on money. Now you say you're not sure how much it's worth, so you need a court for that too. Also, B'shlosha Hekdeshos. Let's say you want to be poted, you want to redeem something that you are makdish. Also, you should do it with a court to make sure that nobody they doesn't get cheated. Hekdeshos B'shlosha. Again, when you don't know what it's worth, both of those, and you need to estimate them. We'll talk about this in the Gemara, because technically you could be quoted for any amount. We'll see. Let's say movable erchen. Again, you gave your value to the base of Mikdash, and now you gave the value to that person, and you want to give metaltlin in that. You're not giving cash. You're giving metaltlin. So you want to know what is it worth? How much do you have to give? How much metaltlin? Also, you need a quarter for a butomer. Echad may and Kohen. One of them has to be a Kohen based on a pasuk. Bakar kos. Also, Tisha Kohen. If you want to be potish kark of hektish, right? You gave hektish to the base of Mikdash, and you want to be poted that. You need a court. You need 9 people, and the 10th person has to be a Kohen. You need 10 people. So like they shows Tisha Kohen. Bottom kiyosebehen. And if a person gives himself to the base of Mikdash, also you need 10 of which is a Kohen. The Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean a person can't be makdish himself? All this will be explained in the Gemara. Din in nefashos, capital cases where there could be a verdict of death. The Esrim B'shlosh, you need a court of 23. Harova v'nirva. Harova means if an animal committed bestiality with a woman, or a nirva, or the animal was a man. Rova is if the animal committed adultery or bestiality with a woman, or a nirva, that would be the opposite, right? Rashbam says, nirva shor sharava isha ubehema shenirvas leish, or if a man, or a nirva means a man committed bestiality with a female animal. Also, these animals are also judged with a court of 23. Shneimar, Baraktas Isha, you killed a woman, that's a behema, and the animal too. You compare the animal to the woman, just like an animal, you can't kill a human being unless you had a court of 23. The same thing for an animal. Bomer, the pasuk also says, that's a behema tarogu. There we're speaking about the nirva ksiv. There we're speaking about, again, as a behema tarogu is speaking about the nirva. So in one case, we're speaking about where the animal committed bestiality with a woman. In another case, where a man committed bestiality with an animal. So in all these cases, we see that it says you killed a man, and the woman. In other words, if a woman commits bestiality with an animal, that's a rova. So you have to kill the animal in the same way that you kill the woman with a court of 23. And a nirva, if an animal bestiality was committed with a female animal by a male, just like you kill the male person, you kill the nirva animal also with a court of 23. The Gemara always says, what do you mean? If a person's chayiv, what do you want from the animal? The animal doesn't have any brains. But the answer is that the busha came to an animal, to a human being via the animal, so the animal dies. That's one shot that the Gemara brings down. Okay, shor and niskal. Let's say an animal that has killed people, right? He gored a person and he killed a person. Best Mishloshi, a court of 23 there too. Again, even though we saw by Rova Nirva, maybe it's only Rova Nirva needs a court of 23 for the animal. But here, even a shor niskal that gored and killed also is a court of 23. Now you don't kill the person there technically, but it's just brought down because a person can pay kofar, but it's brought down to compare Balavumas to show that just like you kill and the owner, if you, in a case where you kill, if the owner is the servant of death, the way you kill the owner with a cord of 23, the same in Kachmis Ashore, you need a cord of 23. What about other animals that are not ashore? Same thing. Hazeb, whether it's a wolf or a lion, a dove, a bear, a number, a leopard, a bardalus is some sort of a wild animal. It might be a hyena or a cheetah or a small, Tosis later on might be something similar to a to a chulda, to a weasel, some sort of a wild little animal.
I think in modern Hebrew it's a panther.
A panther, yeah, okay, could be. Could be they use it in modern Hebrew for panther or cheetah or something like that. But unfortunately, different interpretation. We'll see later on. It's some sort of a wild, small animal. Rashi says, and I'm saying Rashbam instead of Rashi. Rashi says that it's a chayahi. It's a small sort of a wild animal. It's a chaya. In any case, a snake, all you have to kill them too if they hurt people with a cord of 23. Blazer says, no, you don't need a cord, just kill. If you see any of these animals, these are wild animals that are bound to hurt people, kill them. That's how you do it. You merit if you kill them. Rav Akiva says, no, most of them have to be a cord of 23, as Rav Akiva says, but he agrees that a nachash should be killed on sight. What about if you judge a whole tribe that has sinned? That's most of the tribe has, let's say, committed avodah zarah, or a navi sheker, a false prophet. Lost the Kohen Gadol, or the Kohen Gadol has to be judged. LLP Bes in the court of 71. That's the Sanhedrin Gadol that sits in the Lishchas Hagosas, which was a chamber in the base of Mikdash. Also, in order to go out to a Mechemes Rishus to conquer other lands, you need a court of 71. Unfortunately, say not for a Mechemes Mitzvah or a Mechama in defense of the country like we're involved in right now. For that, you don't need a court. You don't add on to the city limits of Yerushalayim, Balazaris, or on the Azara, even though that those measurements were ordained by God, but if they added on for some reason, you don't LP Bezin Shoshim Echad, only court of 71. Then there's only the son of God and Yerushalayim can do those things. Enos and Sadus Shvatim, who appoints the various smaller Sanhedrios, like Sanhedrin Katan, which is a court of 23. For tribes, LP Bezin Shoshim Echad. In other words, the high court in Yerushalayim appoints the other courts. Enos Inonidachas. You don't make a city, declare a city to be Nidachas in which you destroy the whole city, you burn it down. LLP, again, you need a court of 71. Enos Nidachas Besafar, you also don't make a city on the border, like on the frontier. You don't make a Enos and you don't make a city on the border to be a because since you destroy the city, that will invite our enemies on our borders to attack. Below Shalosh, also you don't make 3 cities together in a row, because that also could affect our defense. But you can make 1 or 2. Sanhedrin Gadol, the large court in Yerushalayim was 71. We've already alluded to that already. He said the Sanhedrin Gadol was 71, and the Sanhedrin Katana is 23. How do you know that the large one, the Sanhedrin Gadol is 71? Shenamar, the pasuk says, Esfali Shivamish Miziknei Yisrael, or Moshe Gaban. He says, gather for me 70 of the elders of Yisrael to be a court, and Moshe was in charge of him. He was like the chief judge. So therefore, that's 70 plus 1 is 71. Rabbi Yehuda says no, Shivim, that you didn't count Moshe with them. You just counted the Shivim and that's 70. How do you know how do you know a small court is 23? Where do we get that from? Shinemar. So it's darshan from this pasuk. In the case of the Sanhedrin Gadol, it's pretty obvious. Shivim ish was a Knei Yisrael. It's either 70 or 71. But where do you get a court of 23? How do you know that for a capital case you need a court of 23? Where does that number 23 come from? Shenemar, it says v'shafto Ada, when you judge a person in a capital case. So it says v'shafto Ada. Now Ada refers to 10 people, as we'll see in a second. So let's say you could have 10 people prosecuting him, saying that he's guilty. B'itzilo Ada, and 10 people, another Ada defending, Ada Shofetis Veda Matzel, so Reikanes, that's 20. In other words, the pasuk says you have to have enough people that you could have, 10 and 10. Doesn't mean that in every case you're going to have 10 and 10. You might have 15 and 5, depending on how they decide. But you have to have enough that you could have a group of 10 people prosecuting and a few 10 people defending. And then she said, how do you know Ada is 10? When he was talking about the Meraglim, how long are we going to have this bad assembly of people? Ada is like an assembly, right? How long this evil assembly? How long is this evil assembly? We know there were 12 Meraglim originally. Yeshua and Kalev told the truth. They were tzaddikim. They weren't not included in this evil assembly of the Meraglim. So therefore there was 10. The Ada Ra was 10. The other two, Yeshua and Kalev, were not part of the Ada. So the Ada Ra was only 10. So therefore, we say that you have to have enough for that you can have 10 prosecutors and 10 defendants. 10 defenders. So why is it 23? Where'd you get the extra 3? It says, you should not follow the majority to find him guilty. Okay, you could have a majority for good, for find him innocent. In other words, even a majority of one would find him innocent. Okay, so why did it say you already said don't follow an evil majority of one. Don't follow majority for finding him guilty. So I know that you could find a majority. A majority means even by one for innocence, for finding him free and innocent. So why did it say acharab lahatos? To tell you acharab lahatos lokat yaslu tova yaslu ra. At yaslu tova we said you could find the majority of one is good enough. But acharab lahatos teaches me that it's a different kind of a rove. What does that mean? L'tova piechat. And for finding him innocent, you could just have an incline or a majority of one is good enough. But for bad, you have to have at least 2. So therefore, we say a court for justice in a capital case, it has to have at least 20, as we said, 10 and 10. Okay, but you can't have 10 and 10. 10 and 10 would be an equal amount. So therefore, we say that to find him guilty, you have to have a majority of 2. So we'll add on 2 more. Because if it was just, let's say, 11 to 10 guilty, that's no good. 11 to 10 guilty is really innocent. So you need a majority of 2. So you have to have 2. So you have to have 12. That means you're up to 22. You have to have 12 for prosecuting. That's 22. The aim bezdin shuckle. We never make a court with an even amount, because an even amount you could have 11 to 11, 10 to 10, 9 to 9, whatever it is. And therefore, you always add 1 more. The truth is that with a court of 23, you can never have a majority of exactly two, because what would it work out? If you have 13, could we have 13 to 10, that would be a majority of 3. 12 to 10 doesn't work out because you have 23, right? You're saying, so it's not going to work out a majority of 2, but it starts out that way. You need a majority of 2 for raw, and you add 1 more for Evez and Shekels. That's how you get 23. Well, wait a minute. We just said there's one Bezna Gadol in Yerushalayim L'Shchasagosus. That's the court of 71. Then you appoint courts throughout the land, each shevet for sure, but even within each shevet, every city that has a substantial amount of people, you need a court to judge cases, capital cases. So how many people have to be in the city so that it's fit, and so that it requires a Sanhedrin Katan, which is 23. Me'av Esrim, 120 people. How do you get 120? How do you get 120? So the Gemara is going to say later on, we'll see in the Gemara, just as a whole cheshbon, because there's 23 judges, and then 3 rows of 23 Talmidei Chachamim, and then you need scribes, and you need people who, hangman, right? The person who executes the guy, and all kinds of other, you need scribes, you need all kinds of other people, and he comes out with a number of 120. That's the first opinion. But Nechem Yomer, Masayim B'Shloshim, 230. Can I get Sari Asaris? In other words, if there's a court of 23, how do you have a court of 23? Because the judges are people of authority. And there's no such thing as authority. Each judge must have an authority. To be authority, you have to have at least 10 people under you. So if you have 23 judges, that means you need 230 people in the city including the judges, so that each judge at least has authority over 10 people, so to speak. In other words, you can't have authority on less than 10 people. If these people are authorities because they're judges, you have to have 10 people opposite each judge. So you need a city population of 230. But according to the first opinion, we passed like 120. That's even a small town too. A small town can have 120 people. You need judges all over the country, as it says. Plus it says shoftim v'shotrim titlecha b'chol she'arecha, right? Put them all over the place. So now we're going to deal with, going back now, we finished the Mishnah, the 6 Mishnahs. Now we're going to deal with the first lashon. We said back in the first words in the Mishnah was dinim mamanis b'shlosha, money matters are handled with 3, and then it says gzelos v'chavalos also b'shlosha. So what does that mean? Says the Gemara, atu gzelos v'chavalos lav dinim mamanis. So just say money matters. Obviously, if you stealing or damaging, you have to pay. So that's also dinim mamanis. Why do you say dinim mamanis b'shlosha? Then it says chazal gzelos v'chavalos also b'shlosha. Just say dinim mamanis b'shlosha. Atu gzelos v'chavalos not dinim mamanis. Amar Ravu mahen ktani. Listen carefully. Mahen dinim mamanis. What are the dinim mamanis that you need 3 that we're talking about? What are the most gzelos v'chavalos? Only stealing and damages. When you damage somebody, hurt somebody. Avlo dos favoslo. But let's say lending money, or being motive that you owe money. Let's say they come to court and say this guy admitted that he owed money. They were aid him that he admitted. Or the question, did he borrow money or not? They've aid him that he borrowed money. There you don't need a court of 3. Okay. Why? Because that's not, and as he's saying, dinim mamanis b'shlosha. What are the dinim mamanis that need 3? Gzelos v'chavalos. Only stealing, larceny, and damages, right? And physical damaging. But not loans. Loans is not stealing. When you borrow money from somebody and you can't pay him back, you didn't steal. If you were given money and you deny it, that could be stealing. But if you say I don't have any money, that's not stealing. Stealing is where you took the money and or you misappropriated the money, you were giving it to watch or whatever, and you misappropriated it and you deny it. Then it's stealing. But just not having the money, I borrowed money, or I did borrow money, did not borrow money, that's not stealing. So he's telling you, what are the dinim mamanis that require 3? Not. What do you do for borrowing? In other words, what kind of a court do you need for borrowing? Or say somebody said something. You said something?
Shouldn't borrows money, doesn't buy it back as 19?
Right. So you need a court, but you don't need a court of 3. We'll see why. So he says, in other words, he's saying, the first question was, why does it say dinim mamanis b'shlosha? You already said dinim mamanis b'shlosha. Doesn't that apply to all money matters? He says, no. Dinim mamanis b'shlosha, what is that? Only gzelos v'chavalos, but not borrowing. If it's an issue, did he borrow money or didn't he borrow money? You don't have a court of 3. We'll see what kind of a court do you need and why not, as you're asking. Good. B'tzricha. Why does he have to say both dinim mamanis v'shlosha gzelos? The tana dinim mamanis having an afil dos. I would think, okay, everything, even court, even admissions about loans or whatever, or loans also need 3. Tana gzelos tell you no, only stealing and damaging, then you need a court of 3. Be tana gzelos, and if we say goes, it wouldn't say dinim mamanis having a min. I would have thought who had the field also just gzelos. Yeah, I would think the same thing applies to lending also. Like you say, what's the difference? Either way, he owes him money. Whether he stole it, whether he damaged him, whether he borrowed it, I would think those also need 3. The reason he says where does it say 3 judges? It says when it comes to stealing and damages. Where does it say that? What does it speak about there? You ever speak about, I gave somebody a shomer chinam. I gave him a pikadon. I gave him a deposit. And then he denied it. So he's stealing. And it says over there, Nikra of Balabais Elo Elohim. That Elohim is not God. That Elohim is the court. And it says 3 times the word Elohim in those few psukim. In Perek Chaf Beis, it says 3 times Elohim. So we need 3 judges. That's the judge. So I might think the reason why you mentioned gzelos, if it would only say gzelos chavos to the court of 3, I would think it applies to borrowing also. The reason why I mentioned gzelos chavos is because the main idea where it talks about 3 judges, where we learn out that you need 3 judges, is from the case of gzelos. When it talks about when you misappropriated a deposit was given to you. And chavalos also. Why chavalos? Wasn't if I damage your money or I damage your body, either way I have to pay for it. We don't say, ayin tachas ayin. If I damage your body, you don't damage my body, you pay for it. So we know that. So therefore, Xelos, the Iker part of quarter 3 was said by Xelos, and Chavalos was learned out from Xelos. So therefore, excuse me, if it would only say Dina Mamonis, I would think it applies to everything, even loans also. So it says Geros Chavalos. And if it's only say Geros, I would say, even though it says Geros Chavalos, I would say it also applies to loans. The reason we mentioned Geros Chavalos is because the main psukim that we learn out, the words that we learn out, you need a quarter 3 is from Xelos. So, but it would apply to a loan too. So therefore it says Tana Mahin Dina Mamonis. What is the Dina Mamonis that needs 3? Xelos Chavalos. Avodos Voslo. But if it was just motive that he owed him money, or there was a debate whether he owed him money or not, and Adam said he owed him money, and he said he didn't owe money, then you don't need a quarter 3. So the Gemara says, Ulamai. What do you mean you don't need a quarter 3? 11 Globin and Shlosh, if you don't need a quarter 3. Vamar Bavu says Shnaim Shadana Dina Mamonis, the Divya call Ain Dinam Din. Ravu says that if 2 people were judges and Dejamos, that's not a din. So what do you mean? The quarter 3 is only for Xeos for Chavalos, but not for loans. Why? What do you need? You need only 2? If 2 people judges, that's not a good judgment. Ella de Lobina and Mumchen. You need a quarter 3, but you don't need expert witnesses. You don't need expert judges. And those judges that were appointed by given smicha, etc. You don't need experts. You don't need a mumcha. Okay, you don't need mumcha. Why? In other words, for a loan, you don't need. If there's a judgment about a loan, you don't need a court of 3 specialists, 3 experts. You could tell any 3 yukels will work. Says Mike Sever, why is that? Now listen carefully. We've learned, remember, that if you're motive and mixus, you have to, if you're motive that I might have to pay, make a shvua, right? Motive mixus, you have to make a shvua. If you are, otherwise you're not chayav to make a shvua. If you deny, if you were a depositee, if you were you took a bailment, you took a shom machinam, then you have to swear. If you say you deny it, you have to swear. You have to swear. It's not motive mixus. Now, motive mixus is learned out from the words ki hu zeh that talks about by shomachinam. But by shomachinam, you don't make a shvu if you're motive mixus. You make a shvu if you're motive mixus on a loan. Remember what's the svara? Because if you were a shomachinam, you didn't get anything out of it. You did the guy a favor, so you don't feel indebted to him. So you might just lie and misappropriate the whole thing. You don't feel guilty lying to him. But if a guy did you a favor and lent you money, so you wouldn't want to deny the whole thing because he did you a favor. That's the svara behind it. That's the svara behind it. But the words ki yusef from which we learn out motive and makes us are really written in the parsha of shomachinam. But we apply them to halva. Why? Because we have this concept of ir parshius kasav kan, that they're all in Perek Chaf Beis in Dvarim, but in Shmos rather. In Shmos Perek Chaf Beis, it talks about both shomachinam and shomasachar and towing time Niskanav, etc. All these parshas, but it's also there talks about a loan. And even though it says the words that teach us motive makes us are said by shomachinam, we apply it to a loan, to a halva, because we say ir parshias kasukan. The psukim are merged. In other words, you transfer these words from shomachinam, you apply them to halva. So he says, therefore, what? If it says ir parshias kan, meaning that we learn out a loan from shomachinam, so you should need mumchen also. What's the difference? In either case, we learn out from these psukim the concept of court, because it talks about shomachinam, we learn out the case of court. And if you learn out loans from court, from the case of a shomachinam, loans, the concept of loans and mixes, etc., is all learned out from shomachinam, where it says you need a court of 3, so you should need mumchen also. And if you say no, we don't mix them up. We don't learn out motive mixas and the words of the rules of loans from shomachinam. So the iksav eina precious gan, we don't merge the 2 parshos. Shloshim, what do you need 3 for? Why do you need 3? 3, it says by shomachinam. By shomachinam, where you're stealing, where you're denying that you owe the guy any money. It wasn't a loan at all. So if that's the case, maybe that's only by, when do you need a court of 3? Only by shomer, not by loans. So why do you need 3 at all? Again, if you hold that you learn out loans from shomer, so you should need a court of 3, just like a court of 3 mumchen, just like in a case of a shomachinam, like a shomer. And if you don't hold of the parshas being mixed up, why do you need 3 at all? Right? Because of ein arve parshas kan, if they're not merged, shlosh lamali. Says Gemara La'olam Ksavar Erev Parshas Kam. We do hold that you do need the parshas are merged, meaning what even though it says Ki Huzeh by Shemachinim, we apply it to loans. So loans are learned out from the psukim of Shemachinim. But we didn't Levayin Amcha, and therefore you should really need Mumcha, like you asked. If you learn out loans from Shomer, you should need a Mumcha. You should need an expert judge. The reason you don't need Mumcha, Mishum Rav Chanina for Rav Chanina's rule. Rav Chanina, we had this also before. The same rules apply to whether it's money matters or whether it's capital cases. All the rules of testimony and court apply, meaning you have to have investigation and examination, etc. You should have one kind of judgment, whether it's capital or money. Why don't you need Jewish V'chikr? Why don't you have to really investigate them, do real serious investigations by Din Amanis? Because otherwise you'll lock the door before borrowers. In other words, nobody's going to lend money. If I lend money and it's going to be a complicated case to collect the money, you're going to have to go to court and bring witnesses and lawyers and all kinds of stuff like that. Nobody's going to lend money. Therefore, they said that by Din Amamis, you don't need Drisha B'Chakira. And the same way, you don't need three judges. You don't need three expert judges rather. Three regular judges who are not experts are also good. So if that's the case, so if you are authorizing non-expert judges to judge these cases, if that's the case, if they make a mistake, they shouldn't have to pay. Why? Because if Bezdin authorizes somebody to be a judge and they make a mistake, you can't go to the judge and say you have to pay the difference. You have to pay for your mistake. So here also, if that's the case, if you're authorizing non-expert judges to be judges in the case of loans, why? Because otherwise, so therefore they shouldn't have to pay for their mistakes. So then you'll certainly prevent people from lending their money because they'll say, listen, I'm going to take him to a court. The judge makes a mistake and I'm going to lose my money. So therefore you have to at least be serious. You have to put them on, they have to know that they're going to pay for their mistakes. And therefore that's how you do it. But they don't have to be expert judges. If that's the case, then Tartik Tari, why do you say that you explain the Mishnah, Dinamarmas B'Shlosha? 3. Which cases of Dinamarmas B'Shlosha? Only Xeos V'Chavalos, but not cases of loans. That doesn't need three experts. So why do you have to explain it that way and say Dina Mamas B'Shlosha? What is that? Exails for Chavos? No, Tartikana. You could really say there's two different cases. Dina Mamas B'Shlosha Hedyotos. Maybe that's what the Mishnah means. The first 3 words of the Mishnah, Dina Mamas B'Shlosha. That's Havos, and that could be with regular commoners, not experts. Exails for Chavos B'Shlosha Mumchen. So why don't you say that's pshat? Why do you say that the Mishnah is Dina Mamas B'Shlosha? And then it says, what are the dinim of why say that? Say dinim of Yotos, that's for loans, and for Gezel that's 3 mumchem. When you say dinim of Shlosha, what is that? The fact you said B'Shlosha twice tells that it's 2 different cases. If we say dinim mominus, dahainu Gzelos for Chavolos, that means 3. Okay, then I would say dinim mominus means Gzelos. But you say dinim of B'Shlosha, that's 3. And Gzelos, that's the second 3. There are 2 different things. Dinim mominus could be loans, could be done with 3 hedyotos. Gzelos with 3 mumchem. Elam Maraba, you're right. Tartik Tani, really 2 separate things. Mishum Rav Chanina, because of Chanina's rule that we don't want to lock the door before in front of borrowers. We want to encourage people to lend their money to other people who need money. So therefore we said, even though technically they should have the same rules, because loans are learned out just from Zeus and you should have 3 mumchen, but in order to encourage people to lend money, because if they say, oh, I'm not going to be able to collect my money unless I find 3 experts to be judges over here. If I can get 3 regular guys, that's good enough, and therefore they'll encourage people to have money. So therefore the Mishnah means Dinamamas B'Shlosha Yotos, that's for loans. B'Shlosha Mumchem. It gives a different answer. For money matters, 1 is good enough too. Shnemer b'tzedek tishpot hamisecha. In the singular tishpot, 1 person can be the judge. El mishum yosh v'konas. The reason why we say you need 3 for loans is why. Notice he also agrees that it's 2 separate things. But what's that Zez needs 3 experts and regular Havos needs hedyotos. Why do you have hedyotos? Because technically even 1 is good enough. One is good. A single judge can judge. Because we're afraid of the amaratza, the people sit in the corners who don't know, they'll make mistakes. As well, you can't find maybe three people also, three regular people who are not the experts could also be yeshvas and don't know halacha. So it's impossible that there's not. If you get three guys, one of them at least you'll find at least one of them will know something. It's impossible that one of them won't know halacha. Again, so if you're authorizing three hedyotos to judge, right, instead of three experts, they shouldn't have to pay. They shouldn't have to pay if they make mistakes. If you encourage, if you say they don't have to pay, then you're certainly going to encourage more amaratzim to be judges. Both of them agree now that the Mishnah means dinamamas b'shlosha hedyotos, and that means halvos. And b'shlosha mumchen. What's the difference between these two, between Rava and Rav Shapiro? Shmuel says Shnaim shadonu dinam din el shnik best nechotz. Not like Rav Abba said before, Rav Vu said before, Shnaim shadonu dinam mamas l'direk kol ein dinam din. Rather, Shmuel as well. Shmuel says two people who were judges instead of three. They're dinas again, but they're considered a chutzpahdik. They're impudent that they judge. They shouldn't have. The rabbi said you should have three judges, and if you did with two, you weren't listening to the rabbis. You're considered best chutzpah, but your judgment is good. LaRava, Leslie, the Shmuel. He doesn't hold of Shmuel, right? He doesn't hold of Shmuel. He says, you still need a court of three. Or Rav Achabrayaviku says, Midaraisa, one is good enough, right? But you say three because of Yoshvei Elamishum, Yoshvei Kronos, right? You should have other people there. Right? Yoshvei Kronos, Rashbam says, Yoshvei Kronos, Tagran Shem Bekim Betiv Dinan. You're afraid if you technically mandatory, you need one. But we have three because, otherwise we're afraid you'll just take an Amoritz. So he said, even with three, you could have three Amaratzim, but at least one of them will know something. So you say three. So according to Rava, he doesn't hold the Shmuel. Rava says, no, you need three, except it could be three hedyotos because of the Gzeira of Chanina, because we don't want to lock the door in front of borrowers. But you still need three. And Shmuel, he wouldn't hold the Shmuel. Two is not good enough. He would hold the Shmuel. He says, technically, you only need one. But the rabbi said you should have three because we're afraid you'll get an Amoritz, right? You'll get an Amoritz. So, but if you had two, two is Yotze. You could be Yotze with two also, and he would hold of Shmuel. All right, we'll pick him from the two dots tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem, Nezik v'Chatzi Nezik. Have a good day, everybody. Cool.